Hello, hello, my fellow geeks. This is the Indian AvGeek episode number 73, and my name is Vishal Mehra. Today, we are going deep into the engine room of LCC economics with someone who handles network strategy in one of the most fiercely competitive corridors on the planet. Please welcome Antony Oliver Fernandes, Head of Network Planning and Revenue Optimization at Jazeera Airways. Earlier this year, when Kuwait's airspace was shut for over 57 days, the longest closure any airport in the region has seen, his team had to redraw Jazeera's entire network overnight, rerouting through Dammam to keep Kuwait connected with the world. That is what real time network planning under pressure actually looks like. Since then, it's been route launch after route launch, Milan Bergamo, a fourth daily Damascus flight, and just this week, Jazeera's longest ever sector, Kuwait to London Luton, 7 hours on a narrow body. With that, welcome to the Indian AvGeek, Anthony.
Hi, Vishal. Good evening, and thank you for having me on this podcast today.
How did you and aviation happen, Anthony?
Um, yeah, I mean, look, at aviation, it was a passion when I was young, when I was in my college days. It was a passion where, I wanted to work for an aviation. And then after my college, I moved to Mumbai. And then I got a chance to work with Kingfisher Airlines. As a startup, I started as a call center. So from there, I never looked back and I just took this as my profession.
Kingfisher, at its peak, was arguably the most ambitious airline India had ever seen. A full service carrier trying to compete on product while simultaneously absorbing Air Deccan and going wide body. From a network planning standpoint, how coherent was the strategy, Anthony? And where do you think the cracks first appeared?
So
Yeah.
Kingfisher was one of the most ambitious airline stories in India. I mean, as we all know, red carpet and everything. I mean, the product vision was exceptional, but from a network planning standpoint, the strategy became too complex too quickly. That's my estimate, or that's my forecast. That's how I saw. See, it was trying to be a premium full service airline, and also absorb a low cost carrier through AirDeccan and simultaneously pursue international wide body ambitions. Um, those are three different operating models, three different cost structures, three different customer promises, and everything. So, the cracks appeared when brand emissions started running ahead of network economics. See, Ericsson gave access to scale and traffic rights, but it also brought a different cost culture, different customer segments because the fares were too low, different network logic. A premium brand cannot simply absorb a low cost platform unless the integration logic is brutally very, very clear. So it's basically what routes, what fleet, what product, what freight structure, and what cost base. And at the end, I think everything trembled down and it just became too complex.
Right. I'll stay on Kingfisher for a bit. From a yield management perspective, how did you balance Malia's vision of a five-star experience with the cold, hard maths of seat inventory? Was there ever a tension between maintaining the premium brand image and the pressure to fill the back of the plane? And what was the most significant lesson you carried from Indian revenue management when you moved to the Middle East?
So it worked two ways, Vishal. The first one is, Kingfisher as a brand, Kingfisher Airlines as a brand had a dual configuration. It had, then it used to called as Kingfisher First Class and then the Kingfisher Economy. So the first class product was very heavily used by all the corporate travels and especially the metro sections, Bombay Delhi, Bangalore Bombay, Bangalore Delhi's, or any of the metros. They were extremely filled in the first cabin, I mean, the front cabin. At the back end, we had even the corporate traffic which was working, but at a lower level of corporates, like, the managers, the analysts, and all this. But the front end was always occupied by the CEOs, the MDs, the owners of a couple of businesses, and everything. So then the airline who had this option was only Jet Airways, but we outperformed Jet Airways at that sense because um, the class of Kingfisher was totally different. Passengers were treated, the first class passengers were treated really royally, very well, especially when you have a chauffeur driven vehicle, when you have a guy standing outside the airport to open your doors, welcome you on board with the red carpet laid out for you. That became an highlight at that time. I mean, I'm talking about 20 years ago. And then, people didn't mind to pay an additional premium for that. So selling the front end seats what was not that challenging. As well, the back end was a little bit of tense. Now, when you compare the other way around of Air Deccan was always known for, all these low cost. Captain Gopinathan, who was the pre-owner of Air Deccan uh, before Kingfisher bought it, uh, his mantra was totally different. His, I would say, his aim was every common man should fly, and that's the reason he started tickets at rupee one, and that was actually rupee one. So yes, I mean, when you say rupee one, you don't sell the entire aircraft with rupee one. So revenue management over there was a little tricky because you need to, since you have offered a rupee one, you need to ensure that few seats are given at that fare, and then you scale up the prices, and then you bring the prices up. But then VFR destinations, leisure. There are so many other corporate moments and everything. So Kingfisher as a brand was a very good airline. I mean, I still believe. I mean, if at all Kingfisher had to come back into Indian aviation, my suggestion would be fly only one type of a, fleet. Don't mix up things. Keep your cost base simple, and you can make money.
All right. Let's talk about Jazeera now. Fascinating case study, one of the first truly private airlines in the Gulf, operating on LCC model out of Kuwait, market dominated by a legacy national carrier, its own political weight. Now, when you joined, what was the biggest structural challenge Jazeera faced that maybe outsiders simply did not appreciate?
Jazeera started in 2005. I mean, the chairman of Jazeera Airways, Mr. Marwan Budai, is very ambitious, and he had bigger plans when he started the airline. Even now, there is a huge, big plan which is happening. So at that time, in 2005, when he started um, expanding the airline, 2008, the airline opened another hub in Dubai, and it was doing extremely well. And then all of a sudden they had to shut down that Dubai hub because Fly Dubai came into picture, and Dubai authorities did not allow Jazeera to fly from there. So then suddenly what happened is you had so many airplanes, and then you had to fly from Kuwait as a base, and then it didn't make any sense. So it started initially very well, and then it went down in 2010. The recession hit and everything. So it didn't go in the favor of Jazeera, but I believe our chairman, Mr. Marwan Budai, did extremely well in holding up the airline. He scaled it down. He came to 7 aircrafts. He just started with the basics again. And then later on, when things settled down and when the airline was making money, that's when he started expanding and growing the network. So, when I joined in 2012, the airline had 7 aircrafts with 28 destinations. And then gradually we moved from 7 to 10, 12, 14, 18, 21, 22, and now 24 airplanes, and running up to around 72 to 74 destinations. I mean, um, the market is very volatile. As you rightly said, Kuwait Airways, the mm, national airline of Kuwait, dominates dominates the market over here because of different reasons. Of course, Jazeera Airways cannot do much on that because it's the government airline. So they get the bilateral share on a major 75% of bilateral shares are got by Kuwait Airways, and Jazeera is left with only 25%. I mean, given the thing with 25% market share or 25% allocation, what the Kuwait DGC has bifurcated between Jazeera and Kuwait Airways, I believe Jazeera is doing very well. I mean, it's a lot of permutation and combinations which you need to put forward. I mean, because for number one, Jazeera operates one fleet, only 320 narrow bodies, one standard cost, of course, on your aircrafts and engines and everything. And then on the other hand, Kuwait Airways has two types of airplanes. You have Airbus as well as your Boeing. So, engineering cost can be really extremely high when you have multiple fleet. So, you need to keep a lot of inventory of spares and things and tires and everything. But Jazeera has managed really very well.
Kuwait is geographically interesting, but commercially, of course, constrained, does not have the hub ambitions of Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Doha. And Kuwait Airways has historically been protected, like we were just discussing. How did that shape the way you approached network planning, Anthony? Were there routes you wanted to launch that bilateral or slot realities made impossible?
Of course, I mean, there's a huge challenge. I mean, Kuwait's geography is attractive, but commercially it is constrained. There is a huge flow to India. Over 1 million Indians live over here. The second biggest population is Egyptians. Then you have Saudi Arabia because the Kuwaitis have their families living in Saudi and in GCC. There are a lot of Kuwaitis who have houses in Turkey, Levant, and some other European countries. But then what happens is, I mean, first let's come back to how we had to scale the operations. So when we studied the market, I mean, we saw what's the potential in Kuwait. So initially, when we wanted to scale up the operations in Jazeera, we never went to the Indian markets at the beginning. I'm talking about 2012 to 2015, I would say. We started up with operating Europe and not Europe, basically your Azerbaijans, your Tbilisi, and new markets somewhere around you know, within the span of 3.5, 4 hours of flying
Central
range.
Asia.
Central Asia.
Central.
Central Asia technically came a little later. Not, I don't think so. It's called a Central Asia. I think this Caucasus, House,
Caucasus.
Caucasus, yes,
Yeah.
something related to that areas. And then we started up building, and then thought that that's when we need to scale up our operations in India. And when in India, when we entered, there are a lot of challenges in India. Of course, getting number one bilateral seats was the biggest challenge. Then we realized, getting slots in India is another nightmare. I mean, getting a slot in Mumbai and Delhi was really painful. Other destinations are still okay because we fly to almost 8 points in India now. And then get slots in Delhi and Mumbai was extremely, extremely difficult. For Mumbai, I think we waited almost for 2 seasons. And after a lot of conversations, we had to go back and forth. And then finally, uh, we got our slots, and then we started operating to India. My approach was, I was focused on markets where we had the right combination of traffic rights, airport availability, aircraft range, payload capabilities, cost structures, and most importantly, our sales reach. That's very important because if you're entering any market, you need to have a right sales strategy and everything. So unless then it's not really possible to explore and go very well into the any route. If you have the limited capacity or rights, then my suggestion would be, deploy an airplane and create the highest RASK, strongest contribution margin, and a long-term strategic value. I mean, that's where you should be focusing core, so that it's better for the airline.
Most people would think that network planning is all about picking destinations, but a lot of the real work is in sequencing, right? Which route opens the door for another, which frequency commitment ties your hands on something else, how a new station changes your connecting flows, so on and so forth. Can you walk us through how you actually built a network development thesis at Jazeera?
So in 2012, when I joined, 2014, that's when I took over network planning. At that time, network planning was very simple in Jazeera Airways. It was point A, point B, direct, no indirect traffic, no hub and scoop, nothing. I mean, we used to only carry a point to point traffic, and there were hardly any connections which was built and which was sold in the market. Then we realized, you cannot build an airline if you want to grow beyond 20 airplanes or 25 airplanes, for a country like Kuwait, where 4.5 5 million people are living in Kuwait. You definitely need to have a bigger share, where you need to connect east to the west, and the vice versa. That's when we actually started looking into the India subcontinent, connecting into Europe as well as connecting into Saudi Arabia. So a majority chunk was India subcontinent connecting into Saudi, because there was a huge rush on the Umrah and the Hajj, which was operating at that time, and even now. I mean, that is never going to end. It is going to go increase more and more as the years goes. But that's number one. There was a huge labor traffic which was moving from Kathmandu, from Dhaka, from India, and other destinations. So we catered to that. That's where we built a three bank. It's a morning, afternoon, and an evening bank. So the all the India subcontinent flights, we started in the evening from Kuwait departure, so that it goes in the evening, comes back in the morning. And then we had all the intra Gulf, which is Bahrain, Doha, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, different points in Saudi Arabia during the day. Everything after 8 a.m. until 12:31, so that the aircraft can go and come back in the evening. And so you have a perfect minimum connecting of around 2.5, 3 hours, which was ideal. Then we scaled up our operation to the CIS. That's where comes your Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and including Russia. I mean, that's when we started connecting the whole of CIS market to Saudi Arabia and back and forth. I mean, then we also saw with this connection. So what happened? The beauty is the Saudis started to travel to Kazakhstan, Turkey, and all the others. That's when we realized, there's a huge potential between so many countries, and that's where the connecting flow comes up.
And you compete on routes where Indigo, Air Arabia, Fly Dubai, they're all present, often with much larger networks and you can say deeper pockets also, Anthony. What does comparative network planning actually look like when you're a challenger carrier, you're a smaller carrier comparatively? Is it about avoiding head-on competition, or is there a case for going toe to toe on select routes also? I'm asking this because few days back I was also reading about how different airlines approach Delta's hold on Atlanta, right? And I read something so beautiful. I mean, it makes sense that Southwest is a massive carrier
Of
in
course.
itself, right? But in Atlanta, it's a far cry from being a leader airline. Of course, it has about 10 odd percent market share, and it has to have its strategy that it cohabitates without Delta without bothering it so much. Because if you bother Delta at Atlanta, they can really hurt you, right? In so many different ways. So Southwest network planning head keeps talking about how they have to cohabitate, and they cannot be they cannot have too low prices or fares out of that market and disturb the understanding that they might have with Atlanta, with Delta at Atlanta. And I'm wondering, from your point of view, have you ever faced something like that? And what do you do, whenever you are operating on challenging and competitive routes?
See, when you are a smaller carrier, you cannot compete emotionally. Okay, you compete surgically against larger airlines. Sometimes you choose battles. You need to win every route. Sometimes not possible, right? I mean, the main challenge is you need to win the right customer segments on the right flights. Sometimes you avoid on a head-on competition because the competitor has structural advantage. Like for example, Indigo, bigger network, stronger feed, lower cost, and deeper market presence. But sometimes you absolutely go toe to toe, especially where you have quick point of sale advantage, better timing, strong local distribution, or a more relevant product for a passenger segment. Competitive planning is not just on matching fares. I mean, it is understanding a competitor's frequency, schedule spread, connection banks, sales channel, baggage policies, ancillary structures, airport cost. A smaller airline can win if it's faster, more disciplined, and closer to the market. At the same time, most of the time, we at Jazeera, we don't go head on with any competition. I mean, we know what kind of traffic we are going to get during and every seasonality. So the challenge is always on the low season. That's where you actually feel the pressure to drop the fares, because that's where every airline starts dropping the fares. And at some point, you have to say no. I will not go below that fare, because if you go below that fare, it will really hurt you. So there are two ways of looking at it. One, what do you need? You need a market share, or you need to make money. So bigger airlines, as you said, when you have deeper pockets, they can go for market share. But at Jazeera, we look both. We also need market share, and we also need to make money. So at times we select the seasonality, when to go for the market share and when to make money. So if you see, the profitable months are totally, I mean, you know very well, every month cannot make profits in aviation. There are seasonalities, there are ups and downs, and when you really make money, you really make big money, so that you can take care during the low season, and then you can take care of that low season very nicely. So whatever you have earned in the high season, you can, to an extent, you can support that low season. I'm not saying that you go below operating cost and operate at a complete negative margins, but no, just try and maintain your market share, try and get your things right, because if you're operating a level 3 airport, slots are very, very important. I mean, if you keep canceling flights, the next season you will never get a slot.
There's always a tension in network planning between what the revenue team wants, high yield, proven routes, and what the network planner believes is the right long term portfolio bet. How did you navigate that internally at Jazeera, Anthony? And were there routes you championed that took time to prove their worth?
So I'll start with when I told you initially, when we started growing. We were looking at Baku and Tbilisi. When we started Baku and Tbilisi, we started with two frequencies just to try and test the market, because Kuwait Airways was not operating that route from Kuwait. Air Arabia was operating. Fly Dubai was operating. So at one point, I said, let's try and put this route on during the summer holiday season, and let's try it out and see how it works. So the first year worked very well. I mean, two frequencies. We suddenly felt I think in the middle of the season, we felt that, two frequencies are not enough. People responded very nicely. And then we gradually increased to three, and then for the following year. And then I think after consecutive 2 years, we said, let's operate this route as, instead of operating a seasonal route, let's operate this as a round the year route. Let's fly this route continuously 365 days. And then we felt, the winters in Tbilisi are perfect. And you can go to skiing, and there are a lot of activities you can do in Tbilisi as a family, friends. It's beautiful place. That route really made wonders. That's one of the best routes at the moment in Jazeera's network. Even Baku, for that matter, it's doing really well. I mean, then gradually when we increase the frequencies. I mean, there are a couple of routes I would give you, if I can give you an example. I mean, we started first year, it performed very well, and then we moved on second year, increasing frequencies and everything. At the same time, I mean, there are routes which have not performed. I mean, revenue management naturally protects short-term yield and proven markets. I mean, they always like to be, they're very fascinated when the prices go very high, the profits and everything. But then the mantra behind the network planning is, I mean, the minute if the route is hitting around 85-90% consistently, that's where you increase your frequency. Don't allow the competition to come and take that market share. Put another frequency. It's okay even if the fare goes down by, say, 3% or 5%. I would say 5, even 8%. Drop the fare, ease the pressure, bring that market share up so that you can drive that route with a higher market share and get the maximum out of that. I mean, revenue management rejects every new market. That's a standard thing. I mean, because they say, it's not profitable, it's not going to make money. Why you want to operate and everything? But network planning's profession is, to first study the route, study the destination, see what's the potential. Of course, you need to give time for any destination to settle in. All the routes which Jazeera operated, it's not making sense. Sometimes you need to hold, think, and then you say, I'll pull the plug and say, thank you, we'll not fly that.
Hmm. Right. Tell me, how does passenger booking behavior differ between a migrant heavy market like Dhaka versus a business leisure mix like Kuwait? And how far did those behavioral differences actually shape your scheduling, your frequency decisions, and pricing architecture on those corridors?
So it's the seasonality mix. You know exactly when the season hits, when is the high season and when is the low season. So you protect the high season, especially on the VFR leisure travels. Like for example, June, July, August. It's a pure summer season from Kuwait, outbound of Kuwait. People get out of this place no matter what happens because the schools, summer holidays, and everything. However, the inbound traffic in June and July is very, very limited. There is no traffic. So this has been a historical thing, and that's where and you protect your markets. Like the other side, when it is a labor market, it all depends on the visas and the procedures. If the person is going on a new job, new entry, then it all depends on how late he's going to get. Only once he gets his visa in his hand, that's when he's going to book a ticket. So we have seen a market like Dhaka, or a Kathmandu market. They are really, really late. I mean, suddenly you will see a flight sitting with 40 passengers, D minus three. It becomes sold out on the day of departure. And you have a lot of devotee business which Jazeera takes care of from Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. So that's another business which we always take. I mean, there are a lot of deportization which happens from Kuwait. So that's by far, I would say, Dhaka is the biggest deportization traffic which we carry. Of course, we do carry to India also. It's not that we don't carry, because in India you have a lot of destinations, but in Bangladesh you have only one destination. So it can actually fill your airplane.
Ancillary revenue is often discussed as it's just about back fees and seat selection, but the more sophisticated conversation is about how ancillary strategy influences network decisions and even vice versa. Did Jazeera's ancillary architecture ever meaningfully inform where you flew and how you scheduled?
This ancillary thing started very recently for us. I mean, we are also new and we're still getting used and understanding how it works and everything. So I would suggest, from my past 3 years of experience in ancillary, once we started getting the ancillary revenue stream, what I have noticed is there are two things. One, your ancillary is very low on your labor markets because they do not buy anything on board. They don't buy seats. They don't buy food. They don't buy normally anything, very, very limited. And even if they want to, they will pre-book it and they will buy it in the beginning. But when you go on a leisure markets, or when people, especially Kuwaitis, when they want to travel, say to Europe or to anywhere, they are the ones who actually pay you that. I mean, they will book your seats, pre-book the seats, take the seats and in the airports if it is available. They buy meals. They buy duty free on board. I mean, I've seen a lot of people buying a duty free items on board. That's another revenue making stream for us. And perfumes, you name it. I mean, you can just put a sale, or you can just say, this is exclusively on a flight from point A to point B. We are going to offer you. People will love it and they will take it. But the same thing you do it in a labor market, where people carry nothing other than basic stuffs to India or to Bangladesh or anywhere. There you will not find. I mean, the revenue per passenger (RPP) is very, very low in a labor market, whereas compared to RPP of a leisure market. I mean, leisure is where you extremely get high. You can actually bundle up. I mean, we have there are a lot of things which we are doing in ancillary now. I mean, that's the next move which the airline is focusing to get the ancillary revenue at the next level. I mean, that's how we are working on that.
What's the biggest hidden cost that most people miss when trying to scale a point to point network in the Middle East, especially given the seasonal fluctuations of expat and Umrah traffic?
The biggest cost is seasonality combined with operational rigidity. In the Middle East, demand can be extremely strong during Eid, summer, school holidays, Umrah, labor, but very, very soft in shoulder and low season. Uh, if you build a fixed cost base for the peak, the off-peak period will punish you. Um, the second hidden cost is the disruption complexity. High cycle, short haul networks look simple, but when there is a weather, airspace closure, suddenly the visa disruption happens, airport congestions, geopolitical tensions, the cost recovery will be very massive. Hotels, free accommodation, crew legality, so many things involved. So I would say, you need to have, there are two types of cost. One is direct operating cost and one is fixed cost, right? I mean, now direct operating cost, of course, when you have a landing, fuel, flying, and the part of the crew and everything, which when you fly, only that is implicable. But your fixed cost, whether you fly or you don't fly, is you have to pay that. I mean, the remunerations, lease rents of an airplanes, insurance, and different other depreciation amounts and everything. So what happens is, if you fly the assets very high in the summer peak, your unit cost will go down. That's where you need to scale up and say, how many hours in a day are going to fly in the summer, where you can actually make big money. And in the low season, you just basically fly, a bare minimum operation, so that you cover a operating cost. And then if you can have a contribution margin, say around 25-30%, I think that's where how you adjust your cost during peak and off peaks, and then you keep a standard cost for the entire year.
Anthony, you've been a proponent of real time pricing intelligence tools like RateGain and AirGain. How much of revenue optimization today is still human intuition versus algorithmic execution? And are we reaching a point where the revenue management professional is more, what should I say, data scientist rather than a commercial strategist?
Now you have a lot of tools which have come into play. I mean, at the end of the day, human brain needs to be giving commands to these tools. I mean, if you don't give the right command, I don't think so any system will give you the right output. So basically, if you need to inform the system when is your peak, when is your Eid, because there are different holidays which goes on different every year. It keeps changing. I mean, we talk about historical data and everything. You need to map that rightly. I mean, revenue optimization today has become algorithmic, uh, but um, it is not replacing commercial judgment. Tools like real-time pricing intelligence, competitor fares, demand forecasting will help you see faster. You can take much faster decisions, but uh, I still believe there is a there is a human brain which needs to run behind these systems. It's always, it's how you understand the market, and that's how you inform the system, and tell the system, this is what I want, this is how it should be. A human commercial strategist ask, is this real fair? Like, for example, suddenly you'll see a fare drop. Is this real? Is it for a limited period? Is it a tactical promo? Or is some airline have just dropped a fare for 24 hours? Or is it a channel specific? Or something like that. But the system will not know that. I mean, if you keep the system and if you ignore everything, then what happens is, let's say Indigo drops a fare only on web. Okay. So Jazeera, there is no human brain. There's nothing. There's only a system attached to it and says, okay, you already gave a command. If Indigo drops, go and match. Now, there is no need to match in all the channels of Jazeera. If the Indigo has dropped the fare only in the website, then the logic is you only drop in the website of Jazeera. Then there is no need to go and drop everywhere in all the other channels. So it's no need to do that. So that's where the human brain comes in and tells the system this is how it should be.
Let's go back couple of months, rather more than couple of months. Take us back to February 28th. Kuwait International Airport had to shut down. Most network planners would be staring at a total fleet grounding. At what point did the conversation shift from how do we stop the bleeding to how do we rebuild our network in a neighbor's backyard? And what was the go no go metric for Project Baraka?
The full credit of Project Baraka goes to the CEO. I have told you this earlier also. That credit nobody should take from him, Mr. Bharatan Pashupati. That's his brain. That's how, it's unheard. You cannot even think about it, right? I mean, when you are talking about operating from a completely different country, there are so many legal, so many approvals which you need. I mean, I think the chairman, Mr. Marwan Budai, and the CEO, Bharat Pashupati, made that fantastically fast. I mean, unimaginable fast approach. I mean, I think we were up and running by 7 days, if I'm not wrong, less than 1 week. I mean, there were huge, you had to move a lot of things. You need to arrange busing services, you need to arrange, you need to send all your things to Hafar al Batin, Al Kaisuma airport, which is around approximately 265 or 285 kilometers by surface from Kuwait International Airport. So you need to go there, plan your schedules, get DGC approvals, inform the other countries that we are flying from another country. It was a nightmare, but it it happened. It really happened. I mean, initially we all thought, it's going to be very tough because you need to move engineering, you need to move the crew, you need to move a lot of things, yeah, spares, aircrafts, and it was not easy. It was a war zone. Missiles were flying. You have to fly, and you need to get a safe corridor to reach the airplanes over there. So fantastic. I mean, it was. I don't think so. It was easy, but I think a lot of effort from every single individual who was working in Jazeera at that time. Had put a lot of work behind the scenes. I mean, right from ground operations, right from passenger handling, explaining, call center, so many of them, engineering, making the airplanes. Suddenly you go to another country and then you need to get all these approvals. You need to move things. You know how difficult it is
Yeah,
to get DGCA licenses, to
yeah.
enter. Forget DGCA license. To enter an airport, you need a DGCA. Sorry, you need an airport pass, right? For anybody to enter. You're talking from a state of Kuwait to Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, going there, and you want to inspect an airplane in the tarmac. How are you going to do it? You need to get all these paperwork. You need to do a lot of things. I mean, thanks to GACA, they were really, really helpful to giving us this approval. And once we started this, it went initially for 2 weeks fantastically fine. And then, for security reasons, the airport was only available from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then a lot of attacks. And then we had to move our operations to Dammam. That's another 400 kilometers from Kuwait, approximately 395 or 396 kilometers. So that made, to completely change the full angle of looking at it, because what used to take 4 hours, 5 hours by surface from Kuwait to Kaisuma now takes passenger approximately 9 hours or 12 hours, because it depends on the border, because you need to have a border clearance, you need to have a Kuwait border check, you need to have a Saudi border check, and then you go, and then you reach the airport. So it was a total, a journey which I think a lot of them will never forget. It was fantastic to get an experience of that Project Baraka.
Such an incredible example. Do you think Project Baraka is a repeatable playbook for other regional airlines facing geopolitical instability? And it seems, that instability might be there for some more time, or it might return any time. And if you had to build Jazeera's network from scratch today, knowing what you know now about the efficiency of the Dammam and Kaisuma corridors, would the permanent Jazeera network look any different?
See, Project Baraka is repeatable as a playbook, but I don't think so it's a copy paste model. The repeatable part is the crisis architecture, pre-identified alternate airports, regulatory relationships, ground transport contracts, handling readiness, fuel arrangements, crew accommodation, customer communication, and other things. So many other things. If I were building a network from scratch today, mm, I would not redesign Jazeera as a Saudi based airline. Kuwait remains the commercial home, but I would absolutely build more resilience into the network. Dammam, Kaisuma showed that cross border corridors can be more valuable than people assumed, especially when road connectivity, aircraft range, and passenger willingness are aligned. I mean, the lesson is that network planning should indulge contingency geography. Airlines usually plan for demand, but Project Baraka showed that airlines must also plan for survivability. Project Baraka was not only a crisis response, but I would say it was a masterclass in network resilience.
You relied heavily on the A320neo for these high cycle cross border hops. From a technical performance standpoint, did the Neo provide a specific operational advantage, fuel burn, turnaround speed, that made the narrow margins of Project Baraka viable, where older CEO models might have failed?
See, the 320 Neo mattered because in the crisis operation, a small efficiency difference becomes very large. Airbus states that 320 Neo delivers around 20% lower fuel burn and CO2 emissions per seat versus previous generation aircrafts, which matters when sectors are short, margins are thin, and utilization is under pressure. Um, for high cycle cross border operations, the advantage is not only fuel burn, it is commonality, range flexibility, payload capability, lower trip cost, and crew familiarity also. The Neo gave more breathing space in the economics. Older CO aircraft could still operate, but the margin of error for error would be thinner, especially when you add surface transport handling, disruption, and recovery costs. Uh, what happens is in the Neo, your aircraft we had lighter seat weight seats attached to the Neo aircraft, so our payload actually increases in the Neo. you could get a slightly better payload than a CO airplane. And the Project Baraka was all about, with the fuel increase, which went up, the ATF prices went really skyrocketing. I think Neo was the perfect aircraft to fly out of Project Baraka.
The three big Gulf carriers, Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar, operate on a fundamentally different logic. Hub machines subsidized by geography and state backing, moving global transit traffic. Does that model actually distort the regional point to point market for carriers like yours, for Jazeera? Or are they largely playing a different game?
They operate on a fundamentally different models. Emirates, you be it in Emirates, Qatar, Etihad, are global hub machines. I mean, they go far away. They have different aircraft models. They have different scale. Their economics are based on wide body scale, global connectivity, premium cabins, cargo, alliance, partnership flows, massive international transfer volumes. For a carrier like Jazeera, the game is totally different. The focus is narrower, you know, Kuwait origin destination, regional flows, labor, VFR traffic, selective connections, mm, and more importantly, one fleet, 320 economics. However, the mega big carriers influence on pricing expectations. They create one-stop alternatives, sometimes very aggressive fares. Etihad is known for that. I mean, Etihad, the full-service airline, can just come and match a Jazeera's fares. High customer expectations around the service and connectivity. Um, they also have, long haul and six freedom markets. They're big. I mean, people who wants to go from India subcontinent to say US, uh, I would say most of the majority of the people prefer either Emirates or Qatar or Etihad. There are very few of them who go on different airlines to these places. Dubai is a place where people love to go and spend time in duty free. The duty free is massive. You have a lot of choices in that duty free. You can buy whatever you want to. So there are different people and different mentality what you want to do and how you want to think about it. But yeah, I mean, um, they do rely on heavily on OND traffic, majority to the long haul flights, as well as they have a lot of cargo options because their bellies are huge. I mean, we can't even carry 2 tons of two and a half. At best, we can carry if the flights are full. But they can go up to 35, 30 tons minimum, 35 tons. I mean, that's when you have a 777. But if you have an 380 operating of an Emirates, you can actually go much heavier. You can make money every single way. I mean, you can make in your economic life, you can make in your business, you can make in the first as well as in the belly. So it's a different concept totally together. I mean, um, filling up a 380, you need a lot of connections. Otherwise, point to
Yeah,
point, a market like Kuwait will never have a 380 aircraft filled, anyways. So that's the biggest
right.
challenge which they will have.
All right. There's a lot of talk about Saudi Arabia's aviation ambitions, Riyadh as a fourth Gulf mega hub, NEOM, the Saudi restructuring, Flyna scaling aggressively. From a network planning perspective, Anthony, how do you see that reshaping competitive dynamics for Gulf LCCs over the next, what, 4 or 5 years?
See, Saudi Arabia is the biggest structural change in Gulf aviation over the next 5 years. I mean, the Saudi aviation program, I think, targets over 330 million passengers annually, connectivity to more than 250 destinations, and I think over 4.5 million tons of cargo by 2030. Riyadh there states fleet ambition of almost 150 or 180 aircraft plus with 100 odd destinations by 2030. They just started London. I think from July they're going to start London. It's open for sale. That's the airline we need to wait and watch and see how good and how competitive it's going to be. But for Gulf LCCs, this changes the competitive map. Saudi will no longer be just a destination market. Uh, it will be more stronger origin hub, passenger pilgrimage, tourism, domestic aviation platform, and so. But like you said, Flynas is scaling. Saudi is restructuring. Riyadh is building its premier long haul platforms. Neom adds another layer to uh, the ambition of 2030. Fly Deal is coming up with so many destinations. Saudi will have, I think, potentially it has a growth to accept, LCC as well as full service carrier in that market. But for Jazeera type carriers, the opportunity is still there, you know. Uh, but the easy Saudi growth story is over. The next phase will require sharper route selections, Saudi point of sale partnership, better cost negotiations, more disciplined, more frequency planning, how you're going to do it, because there will be a lot of competition. I mean, that's how Saudi has realized, because all the GCC airlines in the Middle East are flying into Saudi and eating their share. So they realized it probably a little later, but then however they've realized it, and that's how they have planned to scale their operations out of Saudi and cater to their own traffic. Saudi Arabia will not just add capacity; it will change, the center of gravity for regional aviation.
Anthony, with the XLR entering more airlines, the long haul LCC model is being tested again. From a network perspective, does this aircraft finally make low cost long haul sustainable? Or do you think it just creates complexity that might eat into LCC margins?
The 321 XLR, I mean, is a very powerful aircraft, but it's we need to wait and watch. I mean, how people are going to take it from there, because Airbus delivered the first 321 XLR to Iberia, I think in 2024 somewhere. Uh, and it says, it offers up to around 4,700 nautical miles of range, with 15% more range than a 321 LR and 30% lower fuel burn per seat compared to the previous generation competitor aircraft. For network perspective, um, XLR opens thin long haul routes, no doubt, because one, it has got a range to go, and it also support wide body to an extent. That is valuable, but low cost long haul is different. It's totally different, because the cost advantage narrows as sector length increases. Your crew costs, maintenance, disruption, catering, airport, baggage, it depends. Second, what kind of seating capacity as an airline you're going to decide on a 321 LR? And what capacity you're going to put? Is it 235 or more? What kind of seats you select, what's the weight of the seats and everything, because that's where I think it'll give you an upper hand, because the more lighter the seats, you can probably save approximately 2 tons. I mean, we at Jazeera, we had just done our complete, we were on a Recaro seat, and now we have moved to Explicit, and we have managed to put a 180 seater on all the aircrafts with the much lesser weight compared to the Recaro seats which we were previously having. So on the XLR, my bet is, long haul narrow body routes is very sustainable. But if an airline uses it to chase prestigious routes without the right fare, right ancillary product, right cost, it might destroy the margin. It's That's the math. I mean, because see, when you fly uh, a long haul flight for over 7 hours or an 8 hours flying, you always need a lot of things on board. Probably, you might need a better entertainment system, or a Wi-Fi connectivity, because people will move. I mean, people will pay for that. I mean, if you can give all those facilities on board, I think it will work.
And my final question, Anthony. Network planning and revenue management sit at the intersection of data science, of behavioral economics, of geopolitics, increasingly, and even gut instinct. How do you think AI and advanced forecasting tools are changing the actual craft? And what do you think experienced practitioners out there still do better than any algorithm?
Better forecasting, faster scenario stimulations, and more granular pricing decisions. Um, it can process booking curves, competitor fares, um, macro signals, seasonality, even demand, customer behavior much faster than a human team. But experienced practitioners still have an edge in interpretation. AI can see that demand is weak. A good commercial leader asks why. What's the issue? Is it a visa issue? Is it a school calendar? Is it a competitor dumping fares? Religious seasonality? Political shock? Is it a timing of an aircraft, or suddenly sales channels failure, or a wrong fare ladder? AI can optimize within rules, but senior leader should decide, or will always decide, whether the rules themselves are correct or no. AI will make airline planning faster, but experience will still decide whether the answer is commercially intelligent.
Thanks so much, Anthony. Brilliant chat.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you. I know it's late for you, but yeah, I mean, it was fantastic speaking with you.
Thank you again to Anthony for a lowdown on how routes live and die, and reminding us all that an aircraft is just an incredibly expensive aluminium tube until a brilliant network team figures out the math. If you're headed to Farnborough later this month, keep an eye out for how many more carriers start talking narrow body long haul. Next Monday, the 30th episode of the Indian AvGeek features Gautam Narayanan, Managing Director for Virtue Europe. Feel free to follow me on social. You will find me everywhere, including Blue Sky, at Vishal Van Mehra. Always happy to have your feedback. With that, keep your tray tables up, your seatbelts fastened. I wish you well, and happy flying, my friends.